Hey, welcome in, and this is a nice Wednesday evening with Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich for your live weather impact, and it's a beautiful, beautiful Wednesday. I mean, there's some weeks the forecast is super easy. There's other weeks it's super hard. This is an easy week. I'm just going to be completely transparent with you, and I'll tell you how wild it's been and how consistent it's been here in a minute, but let's start with the views, because we talked about this the last couple of weeks, the sunset getting earlier and earlier. Tonight, 6:48, James, 6:48. It's good.
Man, oh man.
I feel like every time we show that Lylesville camera, which stares right at west, now we've got the sun almost halfway below the horizon.
I kind of just
already.
want to leave it up the whole show.
Yeah, because we could probably watch it in real time set. But, you know, the last couple of weeks we've watched that the sun's been higher up and we could see the full solar disk. Tonight we barely can see it. And look at like places in the mountains. The mountains are always kind of creepy because this time of year the mountains start blocking the sun earlier. So sunset in these valleys happen pretty early. So it gets dark. Those shadows start getting really long right about now. And the key part is there's not a cloud in the sky. I said during our evening shows, I joked about this term severe clear. It's a term I've used a lot for days like this when you have really beautiful weather, but it's actually an aviation term that I heard from pilots, and that's where it kind of originates from. Severe clear meant you had unlimited visibility. Now, that's theoretically not possible because you can't see forever, but basically it means if your visibility is over 10 miles, it's a severe clear day. So today was definitely one of those days because you did not have a single cloud out there. And if you look at the sky today, it was beautiful. Tonight, this is going to look similar because I think the last 3 nights we have had 54, 56, 56. I think that's been the 3 lows. So talk about consistency. We're going to do it again. The high tomorrow, though, for the first time in a while, will actually be lower than it's been recently, 76, which is still a couple degrees above our normal, but that is trending in the right direction. The reason I say not 80, because we did this weird thing. I joked about this, I think, yesterday and the day before, and sure enough, it came true. 81 3 days in a row. So to have the exact same high temperature 3 days in a row is pretty rare. For it to be 81 too, which is way above normal, is even more rare. The only time I can remember something odd like this happening, and it was really odd, was it was June and July-ish, 2012. We hit 104 4 days in a row. Or 3 days in a row, excuse me, which is our all-time record high, which is probably the wildest consecutive streak I've ever seen, to hit 104, but to do it 3 days in a row, and that also be your all-time record high. So this is a wild stretch. You just don't see it very often. And I mentioned the lows were almost identical as well. So that's why I said this week, super easy. You could have taken Monday's forecast and just copied and pasted it 3 days in a row, and you would have been right. But tomorrow, definitely going to be slightly cooler, so just a heads up. Not 81, maybe 76. So, but what's going to happen? We got a backdoor front. You see that front to the north? That's going to slide south. That's why it's going to be slightly cooler. When I say slightly, it's not 80. It's probably going to be 76. But Friday looks cooler, maybe low 70s. And I think you'll notice this more in the mornings, Friday and Saturday morning. Likely some upper 40s. So crisper, cooler starts. You see that front, though? That's the front we were hoping was going to bring us rain on Sunday. I was hoping to get some showers and maybe a thunderstorm, but I'll be honest with you, we talked about this with Tim yesterday. The chances were fading, and they're fading even more because look at our 5-day rainfall forecast. It's showing no rain over us. I'm going to keep a 40% chance because with this front, how strong it is, I still think there's a chance of a couple scattered to isolated showers, maybe even a rumble of thunder Sunday. But I would not count on it being much more than that because when you see this, and I'm going to show you this front, here it comes heading our way. It's going to move over us sometime late Sunday evening, and right now that time frame looks to be, I'd say, after 8 o'clock, somewhere right in there. So it's going to be late. So if you have plans Sunday, this will not change your plans at all. The only place I would say that you might have to worry a little bit about this would be the Woolly Worm Festival. We're going to talk about the Woolly Worm coming up here with Tim, but this weekend up in Banner Elk, the Woolly Worm Festival returns after a 1-year hiatus due to Helene. 71 Saturday, so perfect Saturday. Sunday, likely some scattered showers, upper 50s. I do think there'll be a better chance of rain there than here in the Piedmont. Stink bug forecast, these things are everywhere. Walking into our building, they're all on the south side of the house. They will fluctuate a little bit here. What makes them more active or higher on my forecast is when we have a cold night, and then the following day the temperature jumps up to really warm conditions. They tend to love that. They go to the south side of your house. So that's going to be Friday into Saturday. So just a heads up, Saturday could be really active because I think we'll jump back in the low 80s after probably some morning lows in the 40s Friday, Saturday morning. So that's why I have that forecast the way it is, because I do think we are going to see some pretty active stink bug activity, though. We want to see that. Temperature-wise, the long range still looking really, really warm right now. I don't foresee anything really cool. In fact, I've heard a lot of people saying, hey, we could see frost or whatever. There's no sign of frost. Zero sign of frost for areas outside the mountains. Even in the mountains, it looks pretty scattered. And so that always brings up the question is, when do we see a frost in the Piedmont? So this is for Charlotte specific. Our average first frost date, which is about 36 or lower, because remember, it doesn't have to be freezing for frost. It just has to be in the mid to upper 30s. That's October 28th, which is right for Halloween. So the earliest we've ever had a frost usually is around October 2nd, and then the latest date is usually right around December 2nd. So we have not seen anything remotely close to that, and I actually don't foresee anything getting remotely close to that. If we look at the long range forecast, if we're looking for cool weather, you're not finding much there, because when you look in the 8 to 14 day range, this gets us closer to Halloween. The average high there is around 69 and 46, so we could be near that by the time we get to Halloween, but I don't expect us to be well below it. So we're at the point of time now where anything near average is going to be kind of cool to us compared to what we've seen recently. So let's look at your Jerry Hunt Supercenter 7-day forecast. We'll show you what it looks like over the next 7 days, and then I'll give you a sneak peek at the next 10 days. As I mentioned, the only day with a chance of rain is Sunday, and it's only 40%. It's isolated. It's after 8 p.m. Don't get your hopes up. There is so much going on this weekend. Saturday, you see all the icons there. It's the Charlotte 49ers and App State Mountaineers, their homecoming games, both home, so in Boone and here in Charlotte. And then Charlotte FC's final home match of the season, and Fan Appreciation Night is coming up on Saturday. You see the cooler weather for Monday, but then going into next week, temperatures back into the mid-70s. Let's go 10 days in the future. This gets us to the weekend before Halloween, which is next weekend. You could see a little bit of a cool down with temperatures upper 60s, low 70s, but still no rain. Stick around. We've got Tim Buckley joining us, as well as the United Cajun Navy. We're going to talk about some coastal flooding. That's coming up after the break. All right, welcome back. Tim Buckley joins me from WFMY, as he always does, here for Live Weather Impact. Before we get into anything, Tim, we want to do a little update because one of our cameras, and this is pretty much between our areas, Tim, our Lylesville camera is showing a pretty good smoke plume looking off to the northwest. And I'm looking at the North Carolina Fire Service. I don't see any controlled burns. So I'm kind of curious maybe what's going on there. Hopefully
I don't
it's not
see
a
anything
structure
on the
fire.
satellite-derived products either. Like GOES weather satellites picking up hotspots. It doesn't have anything in this location.
Yeah, based on where this is, there was it looks like, in Stanley County, there was one reported earlier. It was a very small one. I'm curious if it's that one. But yeah, so we got a little smoke plume there showing up, Tim. And that's the one thing we're concerned about going into the fall here with the dry conditions and the leaf drop and eventually dormant vegetation. We're getting into probably a pretty active fire season coming up here. So we'll keep an eye on that, and just wanted to give our viewers a quick heads up on that. If you see or smell smoke out there, we're seeing it as well. We'll try to investigate further and see what that is.
Yeah, that's the view from Monroe, for anybody that's wondering. So between those two cameras, we can see it between Monroe and Anson County.
Yeah, so a little bit of a smoke plume there. So it's that time of year.
Yeah, there was a little bit of a dot in Anson County on satellite earlier, so I don't know if that's the correct direction or not, but if you look at the IR, there's a little bit of a black dot in Anson County from earlier today.
That could be it.
Just something to keep an eye on, I guess.
Yeah, so we'll have to keep a close eye on that. But we do have a guest today, Tim, and I wanted to bring our guest in right away because they've been doing some great work here in the Carolinas, and you might be familiar with the United Cajun Navy. I'm very familiar with them, having worked in Southeast Louisiana for 4 years and covering Katrina, kind of where they got their start. But they're all over the country now, and I want to welcome in the regional leader for the United Cajun Navy, and that is Samara Davis. They've been doing some great work here in the Carolinas last year with Helene and then recently with coastal flooding. So welcome into the show, Samara.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for all that you guys do as well.
Oh, thank you so much. So talk a little bit about what you guys have been doing this like late summer, early fall now, especially in the Outer Banks in eastern North Carolina, where we've had these coastal flood events, how you guys have responded and been helping people out.
So we have been largely in a standby capacity. Thankfully, we have not seen the scale of the devastation that we saw during Helene last year. So we do partner with local distribution centers in terms of making sure that, assets such as we can get them are on standby and ready to support some of these areas. One of the challenges with these storms, as you may be seeing, is that these aren't necessarily named storms, but they are storms that are having a tremendous impact from the perspective of erosion. A lot of these towns just simply don't have the funds to bolster the sandbars and the beaches. Any renourishment projects that they do are frankly wiped out if they hold at all. So it's definitely been a challenging time. I'm based here in North Carolina out of Lake Waccamaw. So we have, Robeson County, different areas, and largely we're partnering with different distribution centers just to try and make sure that those centers have what they need to get that out into the community. And then, of course, we typically respond in a search and rescue capacity. So thankfully, we haven't really seen that level of need yet. And I hope and pray that we won't this season. But hurricane season is not over. And we do have another formation, that's 7 to 10 days out. So we'll see where that lands, right?
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us today. And I know down in your area, Lake Waccamaw, Columbus County had some flooding in the Whiteville community this past weekend with the storm. Up in my area, for this season, it seemed like Tropical Storm Chantal was one that really caught us sometimes by surprise. Sometimes we see these storms far in advance and we anticipate it's going to be a really big problem. With Chantal, it kind of snuck up within just a day or two, and we saw all that flooding in Orange County in Chatham County and Alamance County. Can you talk about the speed that sometimes your organization needs to mobilize and adjust just to get to those rescue efforts?
For sure. And, to take it back to what you were talking about just a moment ago in Whiteville was really impacted. And that is, I think, an example of what a lot of these areas are dealing with. We had something like 8 or 9 inches of rain, and there really wasn't a whole lot of warning. So when you get that type of rain, you have a lot of businesses that are impacted. You have roadways that go underwater, homes that are inaccessible, and it can really happen in a matter of hours. So, to your point, these can happen very, very quickly. Regarding the rate at which we respond, we have to adjust very fast. We're 100% volunteer. So, for example, during Helene, we were initially going in overland and discovered with 24 hours notice that the roads were just becoming impassable. So I believe we ended up deploying with, if memory serves, 50 rotary aircraft out of Hickory with less than 24 hours notice. But again, we're 100% volunteer based. And so you have the people of America really are tremendous. I mean, they really do come together. These communities, you could have hours. You have to pivot. You have to get there because the government is not coming to save you. And I think we can all relate to that here. There are still people waiting for compensation from FEMA and what have you. And it's been years, right? So I certainly get that frustration. But the faster we can get in and get out, that's our goal. A typical deployment is 7 to 10 days.
Samir, when you guys deploy, what do you find is like the number one thing that you guys end up doing? And you said search and rescue is your primary goal, but what do you are you surprised by, or what does always end up being the biggest need and workload that you guys end up taking on?
Yeah, I think to hand back the baton to the powers that be as soon as they can get there. So typically we're looking at stabilizing areas. We are trying to get, we walk into rest homes not infrequently during these disasters where people have walked out, locked the doors, and left the residence without food, without medication. It's been days. You come across kids who have lost their families that are stranded, that have lost their kids. And a lot of the time, these people just did not have adequate warning. And one thing I always try to draw people's attention to is remember that in North Carolina and much of the United States, there is no requirement that when you buy a house, you are provided with a flood map that shows your house or property relative to other flood zones. So, and I say this as a licensed real estate agent, but simply because you have purchased a property that is not itself in a flood zone does not mean that the flood zone didn't end 20 feet from your back door. It doesn't mean that you are not in a storm surge area, and it doesn't mean that all of your access roads are also going to be cut off. So it's really important to go ahead and please check your flood maps online and make sure that you know where exactly you're living, because if you're going to be cut off, that's an important thing to know. And to your point, a lot of the times we meet with people, they were never shown a flood map. They didn't realize they were going to be cut off. And, unprecedented storms called for unprecedented preparedness. But I think that that's a key component as well. A lot of people don't realize that your traditional homeowner's insurance does not insure your house against, flood damage. You need to remember to take out a flood policy in order to do that. And of course, right now, the federal government has closed. So you cannot currently purchase a new flood policy. That is not an option. So hopefully the powers that be can sort it out and people can start buying their flood insurance again. Because right now there's hundreds and hundreds of transactions every day that can't close because, of course, the flood insurance is a requirement if you're purchasing in an area where your house specifically is in a flood zone. So make sure you get your insurance and make sure that you know where you're living or renting. That's number one, I would say. People just didn't know. They weren't prepared. No one told them.
I think it's so helpful that this exists just for people that need help after the storms, as you've said. I'm curious, just, you're volunteer based. If there are people listening or watching that want to help, what kind of volunteers do you need and how would they go about, being on the ready for y'all in the future?
Yes, yeah, for sure. So again, we are 100% volunteer based. And again, we hope a typical deployment is 7 to 10 days, but I was deployed for about 2 months during Helene. So typically a lot of our volunteers are former military, former Navy, former Coast Guard. They might be They might have tracking capabilities, search and rescue experience, even if you're certified in first aid. Pilots are huge. We love our pilots if you have aircraft, because at the end of the day, we fully deploy in 19 states, and we're the ones who are first on the ground. We're there ahead of FEMA, ahead of any type of military or National Guard. We're typically the front lines of trying to get people out and get them to safety. So if you're interested in signing up, please, look us up online, unitedcajunnavy.org. Sadly, there are a number of organizations that impersonate us because of, I guess, they make money fundraising, pretending to be us, but we are the United Cajun Navy. And if you are interested in getting involved, please do reach out and register, because chances are we're going to need you, especially if you have any type of skill set. We were hiking Starlinks in and out to EOCs during Helene because they didn't have any connectivity, right? Those are just people with backpacks. Take a Starlink, go in, go out. If you know how to use a chainsaw, if you've got heavy equipment, if you're willing to volunteer your time driving camper vans that are donated across state lines, there really is a role for everybody. It's you could be packing in a distribution line, but that's a big deal to someone who's lost their home, their car, and everything else.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. That's great to know. And Samara Davis, thank you so much for joining us. And really thank you for all the work you guys have done. As somebody who spent a lot of time up in the mountains with Helene, I can tell you firsthand how grateful many folks are. And it was organizations like yourselves that were the first ones on the scene that were there helping people immediately. And it was a lifesaver in those first weeks after the storm when they were waiting for a bigger response from the government. So thank you so much and appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. And again, thank you to all of your viewers. I know a lot of those people were there backing us up, backing other organizations up. We couldn't do it without you guys. So thank you all.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so look them up online. Thanks. I think that's a good point, Tim, about there's some impersonators out there to be wary of. So make sure you're vetting anybody you're giving money to or trying to get involved with. We saw a lot of those scams, unfortunately, after Helene. It's horrible when we have these tragedies, and there's always scammers out there trying to get in on that as well, Tim.
Gosh, yeah. You can't trust anything nowadays. We just saw yesterday with the Alaska stuff that we were talking about. There's fake images just all over the place on social that are totally bogus, that look realistic just enough, but people make money off it. I saw someone's post too, and I was like, I could not believe they were posting fake pictures when there was actually legitimate pictures out there to be shown. Correct.
Since we're on the topic of big storms, today's a pretty big anniversary, Tim. We almost forgot about this, but I'm glad you brought the map up because remember in Hurricane Hazel back in 1954, which made landfall near Calabash on this date in the morning around 11 a.m. And why this is so significant, Tim, this is the only Category 4 or larger storm. There's never been a Cat 5 to strike North Carolina. This before a lot of the modern storms, this was the storm that North Carolinians measured all storms against.
It's one of those stats that you can tell even a North Carolina weather fanatic, and you might stump them or might surprise them because it almost sounds unbelievable with all the hurricanes that we've had as one of the most prone states in the country to only have one be at Category 4 strength. Sorry, I'm zooming out here. I don't know why. But only one at Category 4 strength to hit is pretty astounding. And this is way back in 1954. The technology is totally different with weather forecasting. The impact is completely different. The preparation is completely different. And if you talk to people in the Brunswick County area, I mean, you get some amazing stories, and you don't have to stay there. It goes across the state, up through Raleigh, even all the way up to Toronto, Canada. The biggest disaster they've had in their history is from Hurricane Hazel, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, we're looking at some video here. The storm surge struck me when I saw it. 18 feet. I mean, that is a huge amount of storm surge. And when I posted about the anniversary today, as you mentioned, Tim, this impacted so many people across the eastern U.S. I had an older gentleman comment from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, how it impacted their farm. It was one of the worst disasters they saw in parts of Pennsylvania as well. And so this was a doozy. I mean, to see this storm. And the other thing is, think about this, a Category 4 storm, right? on October 15th. Like, this is pretty late in the season, even for us. Typically by mid-October,
Yes,
our threats start to subside. But what is also striking about 1954, Tim, that was an incredibly hot summer. When you look at all the crazy records for high temperatures in the Carolinas, a lot of them come from 1954. So I didn't look back at the sea surface temperatures, just based on the temperatures in the atmosphere. That was a very warm summer and early fall, so there must have been a ton of fuel for Hazel when it came ashore.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Maybe that helped it to stay so strong because, like you were saying, whether or not you get a hurricane this time of year is one thing, but for it to maintain that strength and not cool down, I mean, right now the water temperatures off our coast are about 70 to 71 off Bald Head. So that's not that warm. So that might have played a role, but it is just an astounding storm. It was one of those that formed in the Caribbean, which makes sense for this time of year. And if you visit down in Oak Island, Southport, any of those Brunswick beaches, a lot of people will tell you there are no structures that are older than 1954 on Oak Island. It was pretty much a wipeout in the sense that we don't really see all that much anymore.
Yeah, it's I'm surprised we even have images like this to see that, and to think if that struck now, Tim. Think of all the new homes and development down there. This would be a devastating storm in 2025, and to see a Cat 4 come inland, it's hard to believe. But I do want to focus.
And this is
about. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, I was just going to say, this is probably the last big hurricane anniversary on the calendar year for North Carolina. Once you get past this middle of October, the threat really is lower. Not zero, of course, but it's lower.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I tell people all the time, like you said, it's not zero, but once you get past about the 15th, you kind of like say, okay, the worst is over. Real quickly, Tim, I know you're in the mountains. We're not going to have time to run the package, but this is Woolly Worm Festival weekend.
Hey.
You were up in the mountains. It's coming up in Banner Elk. I love the Woolly Worms. What do you know about the Woolly Worms? I think like every part of the country has a Woolly Worm Festival of some kind to help predict the winter, right?
It's a fun folklore. I'm wondering about you. For me, growing up, we used to call them woolly bears.
Yes, we called them woolly bears in Ohio too. That's what they were called.
Okay, there you go.
And the funny thing is, they're not bears or worms.
They're not. They're caterpillars, right?
Yes.
I think.
Yeah.
Either way, do they predict the weather? Maybe not, but it's a fun folklore. I love these things.
Yeah, I do too. Dick Goddard was the one meteorologist I grew up watching in Cleveland, and he hosted the Woolly Bear Festival every year up in Cleveland. And he was like when I was younger, he was one of the few TV Mets back then that was a real meteorologist, worked in the Air Force, and so I love that he was into folklore as well. So that's this weekend in the mountains. If you're going up there, be prepared for big crowds. It's also homecoming weekend for App State. So stick around. We've got more news coming up after the break.